But this is the question that must be asked. Who's in there? Who is this? There are at least 3 possibilities. And I'm not sure which is the most conservative. The first possibility is that we don't understand how the world is constructed, and that, in fact, there is a parallel universe running alongside of ours, full of elves who use a language to make objects. And then why you can burst through to this place on this one drug, then that raises, each explanation raises a lot of questions. Then the other possibility is, this is the Jungian possibility. And Jung, I can't remember which one it was, but one of the later things, he talks about these elves because of the Kibiri. The Kibiri are the alchemical children that appear in Act 3 of Faust, that Jung spent a lot of time on these alchemical Kibiri and the question of the homunculus. And he says at one place, I think he says, he describes them as autonomous psychic elements that have escaped from the control of the ego. This is a weird way to go about it. I mean, it's probably an accurate description, but how much does it tell us, It means that the psyche is to be visualized as a half-gallon of mercury, and when we throw it on the floor, the mercury balls up and spreads everywhere, and each ball of mercury you look at, by gad, it has a little face looking back at you. That's because mercury is a mirrored surface. You're looking at your own psyche shattered into thousands of pieces around you. Another possibility, and one I leaned toward for years, and I still lean toward, because I've noticed the radical nature of your explanation diminishes with the distance since the last time you smoked DMT. The longer it's been, the more likely you are to have some humdrum notion that you can pour it into. So the humdrum notion that I settled on was, well, clearly these are just extraterrestrials. They don't come in silver ships demanding to be taken to the National Defense Agency. This is how they come. Why they come this way, who knows? They're coming through mind. Mind is the medium in which they travel. Where do they come from? Who knows? Can it even be located in the Newtonian space-time matrix? I mean, what do you want here? A star catalog number? Would that satisfy you? And then finally, and I think I've exceeded my number of possible explanations, and then finally, the explanation, which is my current favorite, it's a little disturbing, and I haven't quite figured out what to do with it, but I have a sense we're on the right track here. The reason the DMT space feels so peculiar, both alien and excruciatingly familiar, is because these things in this other place represent what I call an ecology of souls. This place is the one place you never thought you were going to make a visit to and come back to chat it around the coffee maker. They're dead. That's who these things are. This is the realm of the dead. Well, I have to confess, in all of my psychedelic voyaging and idea mongering and all of that, I never was able to go that far, to reach that far in my imagination. It sort of had to be presented to me. But if you go to shamans worldwide and talk to them about their spirit helpers and say, what's the deal with this? Who are these things? They say, well, these are the ancestors. Didn't you know? These are the ancestors. It's perfectly cut and dried and normal.
Is the LSD drug mescaline? It has indeed very curious effects, of which I know far too little. Letters of C.G. Jung, Volume 2. Though Dr. Carl Jung publicly voiced deep reservations, he couldn't turn away from the spiritual wildfire spreading through the culture. Psychedelics were cracking open the modern mind, and as Aldous Huxley's Doors of Perception, his book describing a mescaline trip as a glimpse into mystical truth, echoed across the world. Even Jung watched the fire begin to consume the modern soul. Modern people are playing with spiritual dynamite. They're entering states that ancient cultures approached with myth, ritual, and reverence, and doing it with no map, no training, and no moral backbone. But Jung's opening question still cuts to the heart. Poking at the unconscious carries a cost. You don't understand what you don't understand about yourself, because what you don't understand about yourself has you, for good or ill. And so wisdom of this kind is not to be brushed aside. Where there's potential, there's danger. And we do well to remember, every light casts a shadow. So, why does this matter? In Letters of C.G. Jung, Volume 2, 1951 to 1961, in a letter to Victor White, Jung follows his question with a warning sharp enough to wound. The collective unconscious, a deep layer of the psyche that holds universal symbols shared by all humanity, is not something to be trifled with. And I quote directly, "The more you know of the collective unconscious, the greater and heavier becomes your moral burden, because the unconscious contents transform themselves into your individual tasks and duties as soon as they begin to become conscious. Do you want to increase loneliness and misunderstanding? Do you want to find more and more complications and increasing responsibilities? You get enough of it." With this, I end the quote. Dr. Jung reminds us, the unconscious does not hand out miracles, it initiates. What it gives in light, it demands back in weight. To receive its treasures is to be marked, changed, and tasked with carrying what your soul wasn't yet prepared to hold. He continues in a letter to Victor White, and I quote, "There are some poor impoverished creatures, perhaps, for whom mescaline would be a heaven-sent gift without a counterpoison, but I am profoundly mistrustful of the pure gifts of the gods. You pay very dearly for them." End quote. And then, Jung paints a glimpse of what lies just beyond the veil. I'm quoting directly. "If I once could say that I had done everything I know I had to do, then perhaps I should realize a legitimate need to take mescaline. But if I should take it now, I would not be sure at all that I had not taken it out of idle curiosity. I should hate the thought that I had touched on the sphere where the paint is made that colors the world, where the light is created that makes shine the splendor of the dawn, the lines and shapes of all form." End quote. You know, we've been talking about the fact that these are, if nothing else, strange and powerful things, where strange here is the very essence of strange and powerful is, at least on the psychological and perhaps spiritual level, the very essence of power. And the question then becomes, if you have such experiences that you can't quite put into words but feel somehow filled with a sense of meaning, how do you integrate them into your life? What should you orient toward? What kind of life can hold them? In Letters of C.G. Jung, Volume 2, in a letter to Betty Eisner, Jung doesn't suggest, he insists. Transformation demands a road walked in devotion, not lit in borrowed light. I now quote Dr. Jung. "It is not a moral and mental acquisition. It is the eternally primitive man having experience of his ghostland, but it is not an achievement of your cultural development." End quote. He does not mince words. What Carl Jung means is that unearned visions, no matter how dazzling, do not liberate, they regress. Jung continues with a letter to Betty Eisner. To have so-called religious visions of this kind has more to do with physiology, but nothing with religion. It is only that mental phenomena are observed which one can compare to similar images in ecstatic conditions. Religion is a way of life and a devotion and submission to certain superior facts, a state of mind which cannot be injected by a syringe or swallowed in the form of a pill. End quote. And finally, Jung turns his gaze to the alchemists of the modern age, the doctors, the scientists, the spiritual technicians, those who believe they can summon the sacred with chemistry alone. And he delivers his final warning, not with fire and brimstone, but with irony, precision, and myth. I quote from Letter to Victor White. "I can only hope that the doctors will feed themselves thoroughly with mescaline, the alkaloid of divine grace, so that they learn for themselves its marvelous effect. You have not finished with the conscious side yet. Why should you expect more from the unconscious? Da ich rief die Geister, werd ich nun nicht los," which translates to, "The spirits that I called I cannot get rid of now." End quote. In Dr. Jung's quote of Goethe's The Sorcerer's Apprentice, he is warning us, once you awaken these psychic forces, they may not leave. Once you unleash them, whether through a spell or a psychedelic, you may find they no longer answer to you. The world of the collective unconscious, which Jung, without drugs, was the first to discover in its essence as the primordial creative ground in every human being, is something alive that does not allow itself to be subjugated without an equal reaction. For this reason, I have been occupied for a long time with the question of how the unconscious itself reacts to the taking of drugs. Psychotherapy, book by Marie-Louise von Franz.
So many young people today here in Switzerland and in the States and everywhere are heavily involved with drugs, drug taking.
Well, that is the underlying despair and an attempt to just escape the whole problem because it's too much for them. They can't cope with it. But it's naturally absolutely no way out. We would need all those young people to fight the problem instead of walking out on us.
What happens when someone comes to you in analysis and is taking drugs?
I do nothing. I just analyze them normally. And up till now, I've always seen that the unconscious is very strongly against taking drugs. So that then I say, look here, it's not me. It's your own soul which tells you not to do it and that you are destroying yourself. It's your dream which tells you it's destructive. It's not my moralism.
You don't have to take that role.
I don't have to take that role. Then that only evokes resistances. But when they have blatant dreams telling them that they are committing slow suicide, then some of them pick up their socks. And I had once an interesting case. He took drugs and had never any bad symptoms, LSD. And then he went into analysis and then he gave it up. And one day the devil whispered in his ear and he knew he shouldn't do it anymore. He was above it, so to speak. He had outgrown it. But then the devil whispered in his ear and he thought, oh, well, I'll just take it once again. And he took it. And from that he got a terrible head shake like that for 3 months, which frightened him terribly. And before he had never any physical symptoms. But it was as if now he couldn't take it anymore. His body even revolted. And he had a very bad trip. Before he had sometimes good trips. But when he did it then, so to speak, knowing better, then he had a very bad trip. And then he really gave it up. He had enough.
I'm quoting Dr. Marie-Louise von Franz directly from Psychotherapy. The beauty and sweetness of the drug experiences. Morphine gives me such sweet dreams, he would often say. But, and this is what the dream showed him, behind that lurks deadly decomposition, an annihilation of the personality and of life. The trip had shown him a goal, but the dream insisted on going through a creative process to reach it.
Are the gods alive and well in suburbia?
The gods are. The gods are nowadays everywhere where one doesn't expect them, and mostly in the desert. They are, for instance, in the bottle of alcohol or in the LSD or in some other addiction. Or the Wotan, the god of rage, is, for instance, in terrorists. A terrorist, generally, if you analyze him, is just dedicated to an overwhelming rage. And the rage has him. He has not the rage has him. So that is his God.
As Marion Woodman reminds us, when we lose touch with living symbols, we starve our soul, and then every addiction feels like a god.
The archetypal energy is essential to life in the dimension that we as human beings relate to it. The tragedy in our culture is that so many people do not believe in symbolic language. And so they try to satisfy a spiritual yearning with a physical food or alcohol or drugs or silk underwear, whatever the addiction is. That cannot work. There is no satiation point for a spiritual longing by physical means. So long as that symbol is not alive as a living symbol, it cannot do its work to bring us into our totality.
With her trademark raw, no-nonsense clarity, I'll leave you with this piercing line from Dr. Marie-Louise von Franz's Psychotherapy. For every individual, the hour of destiny strikes, in which he must decide whether he wants to sink forever into this meaninglessness, or pass through it as through a gate and go on to the great work of objective self-knowledge.
DMT is the strongest hallucinogen there is. If it's possible to get more loaded than that, I don't want to know about it. And I say so when I'm there. I say, my God, if you can get more loaded than this, keep it away from me. So that's it. It's the strongest. It's also the shortest acting. DMT, when smoked, in most people, is return you to normal in under 10 minutes. Under 10 minutes. Now, this is interesting because people who think there's nothing to this, who should actually invest the 10 minutes to find out what's, a 10-minute DMT trip is worth 20 years of academic pharmacology, art history, psychology, and all this other malarkey. Because then you just say, okay, I got it. Another very interesting thing about DMT is it occurs naturally in the human brain. Well, now what's going on here? He's saying the strongest drug, the fastest drug, is the most natural drug. It means that, you don't have to sail off into 3-hydroxy-4-pyridyl N-methyl marubishtik or something like that to get into the exotic realms. No, a human metabolite, which takes only 10 minutes to undergo its entire exfoliation and quenching, is the strongest of all. Well, then what is it? What does strong mean? What is a strong psychedelic? It's highly personal. Every psychedelic trip is. But what happens on DMT for a large number of people, we don't have any statistics, but it is a completely confounding experience. You may have had the expectation, you might think if you had never had a psychedelic experience, that it sort of begins like the Bach B minor fugue and goes from there as you rise into the realms of light and union with the deity or something like that. That's not what happens on DMT. What happens on DMT I referred to this morning. A troop of elves smashes down your front door and rotates and balances the wheels on the after-death vehicle, present you with the bill, and then depart. And it's completely paradigm shattering. Union with the white light you could handle. An invasion of your apartment by jeweled self-dribbling basketballs from hyperspace that are speaking in demotic Greek is not something that you anticipated and could handle. Sometimes people say, is DMT dangerous? It sounds so crazy. Is it dangerous? The answer is only if you fear death by astonishment. Remember how you laughed when this possibility was raised, and a moment will come that will wipe the smile right off your face. And this death by astonishment thing, well, one thing about it, I mean, let me say a little bit more about it. One thing that endears DMT to me is I like to say it doesn't affect your mind. It doesn't seem to affect your mind. In other words, you don't change under the influence of DMT. You don't become a kinder, gentler person. You don't sink into, a line of drool from one corner of your mouth as you sit there twitching. You don't change. What happens is the world is completely replaced. Instantly, 100%, it's all gone. And what is put in its place, not one iota of what is put in its place was taken from this world. So it's a 100% reality channel switch. They don't even retain three-dimensional space and linear time. It's not like you go to an exotic place, Morocco or New Guinea. It's like reality is swapped out for something else. And when you try to say what it is, you realize that language has evolved in this world, and it can serve no other. It takes years of practice. So what you're looking at is literally the unspeakable. The indescribable falls into your lap. And when you try, you're loaded, right? You're there, and you're trying to explain to yourself what's happening. And so this is like you try to pour water over the transdimensional objects in front of you, the water of language, and it just beads up and flows off like water off a duck's back. You cannot say what's there. And I've spent, 25 years fiddling with this. It's become the compass of my inspiration, trying to say what is on the other side of that boundary. Just 2 large tokes away at any given time is this non-Euclidean, non-Newtonian, irrational, un-Englishable place. But it's not smooth and empty and clear. That's not what gives it its indescribability. What gives it its indescribability is its utter weirdness, its alienness, its power to astonish. What happens to me when I smoke DMT is there's a kind of a going toward it. There's a sequela of events which lead to the antechamber of the mystery. I mean, you take a toke, you feel strange. Your whole body feels odd. You take a second toke, all the oxygen seems to have been pumped out of the room. Everything jumps into clarity. It's that visual acuity thing. You take a third toke if you're able, and then you lay back and you see this thing which looks like a rose or a chrysanthemum, this orange spinning flower-like thing. It takes it about 15 seconds to form, and it's like a membrane. And then you break through it. You break through it, and then you're in this place. And there's an enormous cheer which goes up as you pass through this membrane. Some of you may know the Pink Floyd song about how the gnome, and you burst in to this place, and you're saying, geez, This stuff is really speedy. I mean, that's like describing a space shuttle launching as noisy. You say this stuff it's, and you say, am I all right? Am I all right? That's the first question. And so then you run your mind around the track and you say, heartbeat, normal, yeah, normal, heartbeat, normal, pulse, normal, breathing, breathe, yes. But what's right here, and from here out is this thing, which no matter how much science fiction you've done, no matter how much William Burroughs you've read, no matter how much time you've spent in the company of the weird, the bizarre, the outre, and the peculiar, you weren't ready. And it's completely real. It's in a way more real than the contents of ordinary reality, because see how the shadows here are muted and there's a lot of transitional zones from one color to another and so forth. This isn't like that. This is crystalline, clear, solid. You can see the light reflected in the depths of these objects, and everything is very brightly colored, and everything is moving very, very rapidly. And there are entities there. It's not about calling them up or the whisperings of them. No, they're in your face. And they're right here, and they're worse than in your face, because what they do is they jump into your chest, and then they jump out. And so you're like this. You have to keep saying, keep breathing, don't freak out, pay attention. And the entities speak to you. And they speak both in English and another way, which we'll get to in a minute. But in English, what they say is, do not give way to wonder. Hang on. Don't just go gaga with disbelief. Pay attention. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to show you something. They are very aware of the fleeting nature of this encounter. And they say, don't just spiral off into amazement and start raving about God and all that. Forget that. Pay attention to what we're doing. And then what they're doing is they're dancing around, they're jumping around, they're emerging explicitly out of the background, bounding toward you, jumping into your chest, bounding away, and they make offerings. And they love you. That's the other thing. They say this. They say, we love you. You come so rarely. And, here you are. Welcome. And then they make these offerings. And the offerings are objects of some sort. And now remember, you are not changed. You're exactly the person you were a few minutes before. So you're not exalted or depressed. You're just trying to make sense of this. And the objects which they offer are like Fabergé eggs, or exquisitely tooled and enameled pieces of machinery, but they don't have rigid outlines. These objects are themselves somehow alive and transforming and changing. So when these creatures, I call them tykes, when these tykes offer you these objects, you grok it, you look at it, and immediately, because you are yourself, you have this realization, my God, if I could get this thing back into my world, history would never be the same. A single one of these objects is somehow, you can tell by looking at it, this would confound my world beyond hope of recovery. It cannot exist. What I'm being shown is a tiny area where miracles are being transformed. And and the creatures, the tykes, are singing. They are speaking in a kind of translinguistic glossolalia. They are actually making these objects with their voices. They are singing these things into existence. And what the message is do what we're doing. You can do what we're doing. Do it. And they get quite pushy about this. They say, damn it, do it. And you're saying, but, they're saying, no, do it. Do it now. Do it. It's saying, I can't handle this, and then this kind of reaction goes on for a while. Well, then I don't take credit for it. It was not willed, but like something comes up from inside of you. Something comes out of you, and you discover you can do it. That you can use language to condense objects into existence in this space. It's the dream of all magic. But here it is, folks, happening in real time. And then they're just delighted. They just go mad with delight and turn somersaults and turn themselves inside out. And they all jump into your chest at once. And after many, many encounters of this sort, when I first did DMT, I couldn't bring anything out of it. I just said, it's the damnedest thing I've ever encountered, and I can't say anything about it, and I don't think I ever will be able to say anything about it. But by going back repeatedly and working at it, I think I've gotten a pretty coherent, well, let's not go that far. I think I've got a pretty clear metaphor, anyway, for what's happening in there. And I think a lot of people have this experience. When you talk to shamans, they say, oh, well, yes, the helping spirits. Those are the helping spirits. They can help you cure, find lost object. You didn't know about helping spirit? I said, well, I knew I could, but I had no idea, that it was so literal. Say, oh, no, that's the helping spirits. But then the other thing they say, if you press a shaman, if you say, well, what exactly is a helping spirit? Say, well, a helping spirit is an ancestor. Say, you mean to tell me that those are dead people in there? Say, well, yes, ancestor, dead person. You didn't know about ancestors, apparently. This is what happens to people who die. And you say, my God, is it possible that what we're breaking into here is an ecology of souls? That these are not extraterrestrials from Zenebel Ganubi or Zeta Reticuli Beta. These are the dear departed. And they exist in a realm which, for want of a better word, let's call eternity. And somehow this drug, or whatever it is allowing me to see across the veil. This is the lifting. You want to talk about boundary dissolution. It's one thing to get tight to your partner. It's quite another to get tight to the dear departed of centuries past. That's a serious boundary dissolution when that happens. What these creatures want, according to them, is they want us to transform our language somehow. And I don't know what this means. At this point in the weekend and in my life, we all are on the cutting edge, and nobody is ahead of anybody else. Clearly, we need to transform our language because our culture is created by our language, and our culture is toxic, murderous, and on a downhill bummer. Somehow we need to transform our language. But is this what they mean? That we're supposed to condense machines out of the air in front of us? How does this relate to the persistent idea promulgated by Robert Graves and other people that there is a primal language of poetry? That poetry as we know it is a pale, pale thing, and that at some time in the human past, people were in command of languages which literally compel belief. They compel belief because They don't make an appeal through argument or metaphor. They compel belief because they're able to present themselves as imagery. You know, William Blake said, if the truth can be told so as to be understood, it will be believed. And so these things have, and it's very confusing because you wonder, you say, well, have people been doing this for thousands of years? And if so, have they always encountered this tremendous urgency on the other side? If people have been doing it for thousands of years, why is there this urgency on the part of these entities? And who exactly and what exactly are they? It appalls me, you can probably tell, that I have to talk about this because I am not, this is not my bailiwick. I mean, I'm a rationalist who's just had a very weird set of experiences, but I am a rationalist. I mean, I have no patience with channeling, you know, the lords of the many rays, the divas, and, you know, there's this whole thing going around about disincarnate intelligence, and it's mostly under the control of fairly, shall we say, non-rigorous thinkers. But I like to think that I am a rigorous thinker, and yet here I am telling you that, you know, elf legions await in hyperspace, one toke away. The difference between my rap and, you know, the Findhorn folks or somebody like that is that we have an operational method for testing my assertion. We can all smoke DMT, or you can make it your business to now find out about this and see for yourself. And not everybody agrees with me. I mean, some people say I wasn't anything like that, but some people agree. And I think if you get 2 out of 10 agreeing with a rap like this, then you better pay attention.